Question. Right off the bat, we ought to have an intermodal port in South Carolina. The intermodal port ought to be right off 95, right in this corridor where this congressional district is. You know what an intermodal port is? That would immediately make it so that arguably in South Carolina, probably the most valuable land in the entire state is right there at the port of Charleston, where the waterfront is in Charleston. You only have a minimum amount of land in Charleston, and the waterfront, we're storing cars. They're piled up. We're using it to store automobiles. Why wouldn't we have a rail line that ran everything to a cheap piece of property, and there you could have manufacturing, you could have distribution, but you remove everything immediately off the ship and get it out of storing it on the most valuable land. Make that retail, hotels, residential. Utilize that land to the best of its ability, pay off the debt that South Carolina has. So my idea would be bring it up here somewhere along 95. I can't remember the exact statistics, but we're almost the whole country we can cover from South Carolina in 2 days by truck. So if you had that intermodal port, the trucks could be right there on 95. Regulations worse than the taxation. You ask somebody who's trying to build a new project. You ask somebody who's trying to build a new building. Just a small, if you're just trying to build a home. Let me tell you what happened to me. I bought a house right here in Murrells Inlet, in the Horry County part of Murrells Inlet, right on the line, on Goddard Lane. The house didn't have a CO. So I go, I say, what do I need to do? I do my couple little things. They say, we need proof where the building materials were dumped. I said, really? I said, well, the house was built 3 years ago and the guy's out of business. How am I supposed to get you proof? They said, well, we're not going to give you a certificate of occupancy unless you get it. So I got a willing buyer, ready to close, taxes generated from it. I make a living off of it. Woman gets the house she wants at a substantial discount. Everything stops because the builder's gone. He's disappeared. The house has been foreclosed on, and I can't prove whatever they did with the building materials were dumped in Horry County's landfill because of protectionism for the landfill, so they don't have competition. And to me, that is government at its worst. The person didn't even say, well, let's see if we can work something out. Here's how you can do. No answer like that about working it out. I went and toured the landfill last week just to try to get a better take on what is going on here. If you drive from Georgetown County, just cut through Horry County on your way to Marion County to dump something, they can arrest you. How crazy is that? Because you can't prove that that's not trash that was created in Horry County and you're just hauling it out of Marion County. You don't even have interstate commerce anymore because of crazy laws that have been created. A lot of times unconstitutionally, and they know it, but they're just waiting for somebody to fight it because they aren't paying for it. The taxpayers are. So it's a whole mindset of what government does. I fought government my whole life when I was in government, when I wasn't in government. And so it's about creating an atmosphere where people want to do business. Procter & Gamble. We saw that they're leaving now. Did government create a good environment? If you want to see where something's working, go to Hartsville. It's one of the unbelievable areas in this state where small town South Carolina is still working because Sunoco's there. You remove Sunoco, they're done. So as a government leader, you better be there saying, Sunoco, what can we do to keep this relationship going? Politicians usually only worry about the headlines about the new business they can get there. They don't worry about babysitting the ones that are already there. That's why I went to Taiwan and had a meeting with Nanya Plastics and said, what can we do to keep you here? I actually went back and met them when I was in Florence. They asked me to come meet them because I'm trying to build those relationships. And so Nanya could expand that plant or they could expand the plant somewhere else. Whoever you elect needs to be the person that is facilitating those relationships, trying to encourage new investment, and trying to make it not so difficult for them to do. I love a flat tax, I love a fair tax, I love a consumption-based tax. We now are penalizing the producers, and we have some people that pay zero tax, whether they're people that just don't pay taxes because they do a cash business, whether they're people that do a legal business, whether they're people that are illegal themselves. When you have a consumption-based tax, everybody pays. And to me, it's the most fair and equitable tax there is. To say that some people, because they're poor, shouldn't pay tax, I think is wrong. Everybody ought to be vested. Everybody ought to feel like they've got a part in it. Look, if I can't eat steak and pay the tax, I can eat hamburger. There are decisions you have to make along the way, but when you make it where people aren't vested, they always abuse it. Ask my friend Mary Tepper, who does nothing but indigent for dentistry. Very few of them show up to their appointments because they don't pay for it. Look at the people that walk in the ER. If they had a $5 copay, so many of them wouldn't just walk in there for you needing a general practitioner. They take advantage of it. You and I wouldn't dare go in there because of the cost. If you pay nothing, you just walk right in there. It's the easiest way to get care, even if you have nothing but a toothache. We have created a part of society that feel like everything is there for them. And it's the government's fault. It's not their fault. We all adapt to government. We do what the government says and live within the laws because we know there are consequences. For a lot of people in this country, there are no consequences. The worse decisions they make, the worse they get, the more there's a government safety net to take care of every single one of those. And it's no longer Rotary and the church and the family and the faith-based communities taking care of these problems when they can really decide who needs help and who's just abusing the system. Now it's a bunch of government bureaucrats who make their living off giving out all they can. I was given a program in the Lieutenant Governor's Office, a rental assistance program. They gave me $1 million to give rent away to people that weren't paying their rent. You know what? I gave it back to the federal government because people were just finding ways to abuse it. They just wanted another government bureaucrat, and it just, to me, it was wrong. And so, again, I think we've gone way out of the scope of what the fiduciary responsibilities of government are. But if all of us, every time we went to some government agency, had to pay directly for it, instead of the government paying for it, it would be vastly different. If you saw what they were really charging, the government have got to say, is it worth borrowing from China to fund this problem? I can tell you, as André Bauer, I would never, ever, ever fund another road in any other country till we could fully fund the roads in this country. Period. Unless we needed it for a military purpose. That would be the only exception. I'm just up to here with it. And so, at least with a fair tax or a flat tax or a consumption-based tax, everybody has to have some vested interest in it. And I think that's much better than the current system where almost half the people now pay zero. Here's the reality. I was in Washington, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I talked about how much I favored it. Right off the bat, the realtors said, the Realtors Association, we don't want that. Because they think the current system they have now, where you can deduct that income tax, is better for them. And the charities, they don't want it either, because people get a deduction. And so we've got this system that thrives off it. So even conservative groups don't want a flat tax, so you're fighting some of the own people that should be helping you, because what does it do to me directly? And people vote, they spend money, they act on directly what faces them. I was at the debate last week, and they said, name some things you do away from the government. And I said, man, I get rid of the EPA, I get rid of the Department of Energy, Department of Education, I get rid of NPR. I went through all of it. And I said, I get rid of this agency called the Railroad Trust Fund. Well, immediately somebody that gets a check from the railroad said, you're cutting my agency out. I said, no, I cut your agency out, I wouldn't cut your paycheck out. I just don't think there needs to be a bunch of bureaucrats up there lobbying for more money to foster growth in that agency, and that's what we've got. And so, again, but anytime you start talking about cutting out government, you offend or alienate voters.